It is now my pleasure to introduce our commencement speaker, a national leader in public health and a two-time graduate of Case Western Reserve University. Dr. David Satcher earned his doctoral and medical degrees here in 1970 and was elected to the Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Society. He went on to serve as a faculty member at the Morehouse School of Medicine and UCLA, and became president of the Meharry Medical College from 1982 to 1993. In 1990, Dr. Satcher received an honorary Doctor of Science degree from Case Western Reserve University. Dr. Satcher went on to direct the Centers for Disease Control from 1993 to 1998, when President Bill Clinton named him the United States 16th Surgeon General. As Surgeon General, he dramatically advanced awareness of tobacco use among ethnic and minority groups, and the need to be more proactive in educating young people about responsible sexual behavior. His work to address racial and ethnic disparities in health helped influence the nation's Healthy People 2010 initiative. Today, Dr. Satcher serves as director of the Satcher Health Leadership Institute and holds the Poussaint Satcher Cosby Chair in Mental Health at the Morehouse School of Medicine. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. David Satcher back to his alma mater and present him as the 2009 commencement speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President Snyder, for that very kind introduction to distinguished provosts and deans, other administrators, members of the faculty and students and staff, to the Board of Trustees and fellow trustee emerita, fellow alumni, and to all of you distinguished people. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to be able to join you on this very special occasion. I especially want to greet the class of 2009 and to join in congratulating you for the tremendous commitment and effort that brings you to this day. I also want to commend those who supported you, your parents and grandparents and other family members. So it's a great day. I never tire of commencements. There's an excitement that is unique to commencements, and I feel that excitement with you today. I do want to especially recognize a person who has been a great supporter of mine and my career throughout the years, and that's your Congressman, Louis Stokes. Thank you. Now, I guess since I have my degree and my honorary degree, I can admit that I did cut some classes while I was a student here. I cut classes first to work in his first campaign back in 1967, 68. And during the years that he served in Congress, and whenever I needed something from him, I would remind him of that I cut classes. And you would have thought that he would have gotten tired of me, but he always greeted me with that same great smile and was one of the foremost leaders in the history of the Congress of the United States. Please join me in giving him. Thank you. Now, I know you're here today, as I said, because of the hard work and efforts of a lot of people, but also the dreams of a lot of people. Some ancestors whom you may never have met had dreams that have a lot to do with your being here today. But you also had your own dreams, and I guess my first message to you today is that this is no time to stop dreaming. Without dreams, it's very hard to continue to move forward. The poet Langston Hughes said, "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is like a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams go, life is like a frozen land covered with snow. So hold fast to dreams. Continue to dream as you leave this place, as you aim high. I want to speak briefly about the bridges of our lives. And I know that we have some outstanding commencement speakers here today whom you will hear later. So I want to make sure that they have time to address you. But I do want to say a word about the important bridges of our lives. And of course, you know how important bridges can be. There are some outstanding bridges in our history. There's the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, the Veale Bridge in New York, perhaps the largest suspended bridge. There's the Chesapeake Bay Bridge in Virginia. And in New Orleans during the hurricane, bridges played a very important role. And when those twin bridges along the Pontchartrain gave way, it was a big problem for a lot of people. So there are also bridges that help us in life to get from one place to the other. And there are some messages about bridges that I hope you will not forget as you leave here today. And that first message, of course, is don't forget the bridges that brought you here. There have been important bridges in life, certainly your parents and family and sometimes spouses and maybe even children that have played a major role in your being here today. Don't forget the bridges that brought you to this place. That's the first message. Second message is make sure that you take the right bridge out of here to the rest of your life. And then finally, take seriously your responsibility to build bridges for others. Take seriously that responsibility. Now, I'm here today, and my CV doesn't cover the fact that there have been important bridges in my life. I had great parents. Neither of them finished elementary school, but they were passionate about the education of their children. They had a deep faith and a deep commitment to the education of their children. I'm really pleased that some of my relatives are here today. I'm from a family of 10. My mother was from a family of 17, my father of 13, so I have a lot of relatives. But I always get excited when I see them. These are bridges in our lives that we cannot not forget. The teachers who taught us, and I grew up in a time in Alabama when schools were segregated, and we dealt with hand-me-down books, but I had teachers who taught us as if their very freedom depended upon it. And if it were not for their commitments, I certainly wouldn't be here today. And I'm sure you've had teachers like that. So we can't forget these very important bridges in our lives. Remember the bridges of your life. Case Western Reserve University, it's been an important bridge in my life. It was a long journey from the cotton fields of Alabama to this institution in 1963. And yet, when I left here, I was armed not only with academic preparation, but with confidence. I remember when the press greeted me as the new director of the CDC in 1993. Their first question was, Dr. Satcher, how does it feel to be the first African-American director of the CDC? I thought about that, and then I said, well, you know, it feels great because you will never be able to ask anybody else that question again. But I also said, you know, my goal is not to be the first African-American to be director of the CDC. I've accomplished that. My goal is to be the best director that the CDC has ever had. And that was my goal, and that's what I worked toward. 4.5 years later, President Clinton asked me to serve not only as Surgeon General, but the Assistant Secretary for Health. And in that role, as you know, I was able to contribute in a lot of ways to issue the first ever Surgeon General's report on mental health, the first ever Surgeon General's report on oral health, the first ever Surgeon General's report on overweight and obesity. That's really started a major effort now for us to reverse what is not only an epidemic, but a pandemic of overweight and obesity. So the bridges are important. Well, it's also important for you today, as you get ready to leave this great institution, to take the right bridges out of here. It's important that this is a critical decision, that you take the right bridges. Make good use of what you have learned to this point. So often in life, there's a gap between what we know and what we do. And you're challenged to have the discipline and the wisdom, and the commitment to make the best of what you know. Now, my favorite story about that is a story about a man in a hot air balloon who was traveling across the country, and at a certain point, he realized that he was lost. He had no idea where he was, so he decided that he would lower the balloon to see if he could spot some recognizable landmarks. So he lowered the balloon, and he didn't see anything that he recognized, so he kept lowering it. And it was only after he got to about 30 feet above ground that he spotted something. There seemed to have been a man working in the field below. So he yelled out, "Where am I?" And the man stopped digging, and he looked up, and he said, "Well, you're in a hot air balloon about 30 feet above ground." Well, the man in the balloon said, you must be a scientist. Do you work in science? You sound like a scientist." And the man said, "My goodness, I am a scientist, but how in the world did you know that?" And the man in the balloon said, "I knew that because what you've told me is technically correct, but it is of absolutely no use to me right now." Well, not to be outdone, the man on the ground said, "Well, you sound like one of those policymakers from Washington or somewhere." And the man in the balloon said, "My goodness, I'm a leading policymaker, but how could you have known that?" And the man on the ground said, "I knew that because you're in the same position you were when we met. You don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going, and now you're blaming me." Well, let me say that whatever your field of endeavor, the challenge to connect what we know and what we do is a serious challenge. Kay Redfield Jamison wrote about that challenge in her book, Night Falls Fast, about teenagers committing suicide. She challenged our mental health system, our healthcare system, to become more fair and more aggressive. That was a major recommendation in the first report that I issued on mental health. It was that this nation move to comprehensive parity of access to mental health services. Now, I have to tell you, we finally did it, but it took 10 years, and hidden in that bailout legislation, if you go look for it, is the Mental Health Parity Act. And hopefully we will implement it. So be sure to take the right bridges out of here. Some bridges are important to take, or some bridges are important to leave behind. I think it was James Russell who said that one of the most difficult lessons in life to learn is which bridges to cross and which bridges to burn. There are some bridges that you want to burn. I mean, if somehow you got involved in drugs somewhere along the way, it's time to burn that bridge. If you dealt with sex as if it were a game, it's time to burn that bridge. If you were dishonest as you pursued your classes, it's time to burn that bridge. This country needs leaders of integrity. Integrity is critical to our future. We need to know that the people who are preparing food for our children are people of integrity, and they will not compromise in order to make money. We need to know that the people who are heading major corporations in this country, where many people have their lifetime savings invested, we need to know that those leaders are people of integrity who put the plight of their corporation and the people who trust them first. We need people of integrity leading this country. We need global leaders who put the safety and peace of people above war. We need leaders of integrity. So there are some bridges that you should cross and other bridges to burn. The last lesson is the need for bridge builders. As you know, the people who helped to bring you to this point were bridge builders in many cases. This institution, you've heard about some of the bridge builders that bring this institution to the point where we are today and continue to build this institution. We need more bridge builders. One of my favorite poems is the poem by Will Allen Drumgoole. It's called Bridge Builder. It says, an old man going along a highway came at the evening, cold and gray, to a chasm vast and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fears for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you're wasting your time and strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build you the bridge at evening tide? And this is what he said. He lifted his whole old gray head. Good friend, in the path I've come, he said, there followed after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that has been naught for me, to that fair-haired youth, may it pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him. Each of us has that responsibility to build bridges, to take what we have gained, what we have learned, and to build bridges for others. The nation needs more bridge builders. We need bridge builders in education that will see that all of our children receive quality education and are motivated toward education. We need education to keep children out of the criminal justice system. We need to stop dumping our future resources into the criminal justice system. We need a criminal justice system which rehabilitates as opposed to developing people who go back and prey on communities. We need leadership in criminal justice. And of course, I don't have to tell you that we need an economy that serves the people, that motivates people for quality work, that rewards quality work, and that keeps us as a nation not only competitive, but a leader. We need a global community where people are working for peace. We need better health and better health care. Now, I have to end with this because this has been my career. We are now struggling with health system reform, and I carefully say health system reform, not health care reform. You see, health is not just about health care. In fact, access to quality health care accounts for about 15% of the variation in health outcome. Environment accounts for about 25%, genetics maybe 20%, behavior 40 to 50%. So we need a health system that incentivizes healthy behavior. We need to start early helping our children to become habituated to physical activity and good nutrition. No longer can we feel comfortable saying we cannot afford physical education K through 12. No longer can we addict our children to salt, sweets, and fats, and then complain about the rise in diabetes and cardiovascular disease and cancer. We need a health system. And this may be our best chance. I'm very optimistic about the leadership toward health system reform that we're seeing in the White House and the Congress. I've testified before a committee in the House, and Friday, the committee in the Senate on nutrition. I believe there's a serious commitment to health system reform. So we have to continue to work for that. Well, nobody said it was going to be easy. It has certainly not been easy for me. But I want to close by encouraging you to stay the course. When I was a student at Morehouse College, and there were other students there like myself who had come from backgrounds that had been punishing in many ways, but Morehouse College was determined to convince us that we were special, that we were supposed to be leaders. So every day except Saturday, we had to go to chapel. I mean, they really tried hard. So on Tuesday, the president, Benjamin Mays, would actually come to chapel and speak to the students. And I want to give you a flavor. I have a lot of Benjamin Mays quotes, but I close with this one. Benjamin Mays said, "It must be borne in mind that the great tragedy of life is not in failing to reach all your goals, it's in having no goals for which you are reaching. It's not a calamity to die with dreams unfulfilled, but it is a calamity not to dream. It's not a disaster if somehow you fail to achieve your highest ideals, but it's a disaster if you have no high ideals for which you're striving. It's not a disgrace to fail to reach the stars, but it's a disgrace to have no stars for which you're reaching. In the final analysis, he said, and I say to you today, not failure, but low aim is sin. So as you leave here today, do not be guilty of low aim. Thank you.